Okay, Brian Bremberg is co-host of The Bottom Line and The Big Money Show. David Asman is a Fox Business anchor. Pretend we said nothing as we chatted waiting this segment. Because this is something everybody is talking about. And by the way, the Dow didn't just turn positive for the day, but the U.S. stock market in general is hitting all-time highs. Look at that, just a few hundred points now from 50,000 on the Dow. But this is happening as there is concern about the independence of the Federal Reserve based on what is happening now with this DOJ investigation.
But the market's telling you something.
What is it telling us?
What it's telling you is that maybe this is one of those times when it's not going to be pursued with the vigilance that somebody would pursue a big criminal. I'm talking about the criminal investigation of Jerome Powell. It's ticking him off. What bothers me most about it is he's been a terrible Federal Reserve chair. He's wrong on inflation. He's been wrong on growth. He said we were going to be growing at 2% right now. Instead, we're growing well over 4%, possibly to the Kudlow 5%.
So to Mohamed El-Erian's point about accountability.
Let me just finish my point, which is that that's how he would have gone down in history. Now, he's going to become a martyr. That's the first reference to him in the history books is going to be there was a criminal investigation against him by a president that turned the Fed into a political institution.
Okay.
Just let him live with the disaster that he has presented.
So you're
far.
wishing this would not have happened to begin with, even though Caroline Leavitt
on this.
joined us. Well, Bessent is saying there's no daylight. This new Axios report is saying there's no daylight between Bessent and the president on the issue of Jerome Powell. But there were reports otherwise, to your point. Caroline Leavitt joined us last hour. I asked about it, and she pointed all fingers to the DOJ. Listen.
As for the criminal probe, you'll have to ask the Department of Justice about that. They are in charge. I do know one thing is for sure. Jerome Powell has proven he's not very good at his job. As to whether he's a criminal, that's an answer the Department of Justice is going to have to find. And whether or not they do, I'd defer that to them.
Brian, what's at stake here?
Well, there was supposed to be a lot at stake when the news came out and everyone was predicting, my gosh, what's going to happen to the bond market when this news comes out? Guess what? Bond yields today are where they were 5 years ago. Stock market's at record highs. In other words, the people with money on the line look at what happened with this and they're saying it's not that big of a deal. It's an investigation. Investigations can be dropped. The most important thing you do with somebody who's bad at their job is you remove them from their job. And that's what's going to happen to Jay Powell in 3.5 months. So with all due respect to Janet Yellen and everyone who's saying this is threatening Fed independence, my answer is if it was, I don't think the market would be responding the way that it is.
Yeah, I mean, but even though Senator Thom Tillis is speaking up, he's saying that now the independence and credibility of the DOJ is in question. I'll oppose the confirmation of any nominee for the Fed, including the upcoming Fed chair vacancy, until this legal matter is fully resolved. I mean, how does that...
Well,
look,
none of us are aware of the details of what's going to be in this criminal investigation that a grand jury is going to look into. It will be up to the grand jury to decide. Of course, the classic definition of a grand jury, they could indict a ham sandwich and get away with it. So grand juries normally do indict when a case is brought to them. In this case, they may not, but we don't know. It may be, Brian might be right, that there's enough stuff in there that specifies and has the evidence that, in fact, Jerome Powell lied when he spoke in front of the country under oath, saying that, talking about this new Fed building that's going on, that's way over budget. I think it's just he said what he was told by his people. That's what he's done at the Fed. He says what those 300 economists tell him to say, most of which has proven to be wrong, again, with the key issues of inflation and growth.
All right. Lastly, I just want to get a couple more things in here. What crossing right now, there's a lot of talk with the Interior Secretary Burgum starting to see low oil prices and opportunity to fill the SPR.
Hey.
A lot of people care about that with oil at $55 a barrel and seemingly continues to go lower. Just want to get that in there. Also, this credit card situation where the President Trump has called for a cap on the interest rates at 10%. I haven't seen any banks raise their hand and say, okay, we're willing to do that. I mean, this would put them in a major predicament if indeed they would then have to operate at a loss if they were required to put caps on these credit cards. Where are you on this issue?
Price controls never work. This is a price control on on interest rates. What price controls do is they lead to shortages. That means there will be a shortage of opportunities to borrow money. That's not good for the economy. I think, again, this is one of those things, as Brian had said, you just throw out there and see how the market reacts.
Okay, Brian.
He did post it the same day. I think he posted that John Harbaugh should be the coach of the Giants. So there's some things he says that don't always get into policy. By the way, when he posted it, buy now, pay later stocks went way up because people said, well, if you can't get a credit card, you're going to go buy now, pay later.
Yeah.
Those stocks are back down. So, Sandra, I just kind of doubt that a lot of this stuff everybody's really worried about is going to come to fruition. Sometimes you just got to take a step back and not hyperventilate.
I mean, look at the market. The market's doing great right now.
Well, just
so you're right on that.
What's hitting right now? I mean, you guys are perfectly timed. Our econ panel, all this econ news is crossing. Also, we are just learning through White House official. President Trump spoke by phone this morning to the Mexican president. Sheinbaum had a very good conversation with Donald Trump, she says. We talked about various topics, including security with respect to our sovereignties, the reduction of drug trafficking, trade and investments. Yeah. And there you have the markets continuing to make record highs. By the way, gas now down 11% since inauguration day, oil down 24%. Those are some big wins he can tout at the, he's being in Detroit tomorrow, right?
Never a dull moment with this guy.
A big address he's going to be making there. We'll be watching for it. Thanks to both of you.
Thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.